curse is broken. Fenner beat Oli, big time from Bryant Dunstan, and a whole lot more as we look ahead to a big week of Euroleague action. It's all ahead of us on Sweet 16. Tune in.
Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of Sweet 16, an open look on Euroleague basketball. I'm Moshe from Team Scout. As always with me, both Emmett and Aris. Hi guys, how are you?
Greetings from Dublin, where it's a brisk 0 degrees, hence wearing the dressing gown this morning for the recording. But other than that, doing good.
And hello from Greece and from the first day of the spring, which you know what it means. It means that it's time for the Euroleague playoffs.
Although it's pretty much freezing in Dublin, we had a muy caliente weekend with Euroleague basketball action. Emmett, with what we've had and what we're looking through, what are we expecting in this episode?
Well, obviously, we had some crazy big performances which we're going to get to in the middle part of the show, Moshe, because last week was just, we were actually running out of big-time performances to fit in almost. It's a case of, we got this slot, how do we make sure we get everybody mentioned? But we're getting them all in. Naturally, and a result of those big-time performances, we had some very interesting games, thankfully, as well. And, the race for 7th and 8th is now for 7th and 8th, not just for 8th. So we're going to have a big talk about that. And, of course, the look ahead to what's in store in the week ahead. It's a pretty busy week where I can guarantee that every place there's a EuroLeague game is warmer than Dublin. And I suppose on that note, it's time to get to our increasingly inaccurately named 4-minute warning.
4 minutes to get through all the action that just happened in EuroLeague. It's the 4-minute warning. And as ever, the 4-minute warning isn't quite 4 minutes, but, it's that time of season where there's too much to talk about, folks. So maybe let's call it the 4x4 minute warning in this case.
And so we begin the 4-minute warning, or a 14-minute warning, depending on how you want to look at it, with some important news. We've got a thing with Zvezda. Nothing against them, just, when we say they're going to win, they lose. When we say they're going to lose, they win. So, last time out, universally, we said Zvezda would win. Zvezda won! Moshe! Zvezda won! The curse is broken!
Yes, the curse is broken, and we had it actually even a week before that, or 2 weeks, because it was a domestic cup week. We said that they're going to lose to Cheska, nothing to worry about. We said they're going to bounce back versus Galatasaray. They did. Emmett, I think we just managed to get ourselves 2 seats in the Final Four in Belgrade, and we're going to become, I think, 2 of the most, respected, well, not just the respected people, but I do think the 2 most wanted, even the 3 most wanted guys to be present at the premises.
Well, yeah, I think we were previously most wanted in that they wanted to kill us. Now they'll actually want to drink with us, so that's a good upside. But in all seriousness, I don't think the Zvezda fans were that angry at us, but they were kind of finding it bizarre how we were quite good at getting the ideal wrong result week in, week out. Not a lot to talk about with that game because they just came out, they got the job done. Far more interesting game in Madrid where Real came out against Darüşşafaka, and it was really a huge start. Obviously, one individual in particular, we're going to let Moshe talk a bit more about him in a second, but they just got off to that hot start, and that essentially was enough in the end. It's one of those sort of things when Real want to just come out and get down to business. It's very, very, very hard to stop them when they just come out with that approach. And you need to be ready for it in many respects, but there's only so much you can do, which is essentially just, hope they don't make those shots in some respects, because some of those shots were defended brilliantly, that's the way it is. Moshe, your thoughts on that game?
Well, Emmett, I agree, but first I gotta say I think we kind of managed to activate the cheat code as we tweeted about it during the game. First quarter, 19 points, without even one miss. I think it was. That was crazy. And we said that Darüşşafaka might try and slow down the pace. I think the final score shows that they kind of failed big time with that aspect. The score was 101 to 83, 18-point difference. You cannot let Madrid run, especially not in their home. A lot has been said throughout the season about Darüşşafaka, the season they're having, but right now it's like they are on life support, and I'm not even sure that is going to cut it like, in the way on their race to the playoffs, because looking at things as they are right now, Baskonia has the advantage, like the points average between the teams. Anadolu, they have the double game winning advantage. So right now, the only way they can actually make it to the playoffs is by having one more win than both Anadolu or Baskonia. It is getting hotter over there, but we cannot forget that there's also a one-game difference, like between other spots in the playoffs. And you know what? Right now, with what Žalgiris managed to do, they kind of, they are sending us a message. Guys, don't rule us out. We are, we're going at it. We're going to try. And I think that they are making a strong case why they deserve to be like, the surprise of the season, managing to get into the final 8.
Yeah. Like, I don't think they're dead, but they're doing all they can to ensure that we keep talking about them week in, week out, which pretty much is all you can ask for. Like, I had Žalgiris down as a basement fodder for the year. I hadn't got Zvezda much better than that. They've both comfortably proven me wrong in that respect already. Like, Žalgiris getting to double-digit wins, for me, that's a big bar for them to hit this year. So they got to that, great. For me, everything from here for them is gravy. They could make the playoffs yet, don't get me wrong, but right now they got to be delighted with what they've done so far. Like, if you told me 10-13 after 23 games, I'd have basically said to you, there's no way Saras isn't coach of the year. Oh, they didn't guess what was going to happen in Belgrade. So, that's the level of it.
It looks like we have a three-way standoff, kind of, with three teams, obviously Baskonia, Anadolu Efes, and Dacia. Things are getting more and more complicated, and as we've mentioned earlier, with Žalgiris saying, we're still here, guys, don't rule us out, but we cannot overlook the amazing game that Dunstan had. Actually, the entire amazing game we had between Baskonia and Efes. The game was played in Istanbul. Efes they controlled the game from the get-go, till the buzzer sounded. So it was they made it look easy, even though Baskonia, they tried. But you know what? Just Efes at this point, when they are playoff bounded, with a Jugoplastika graduate, standing behind the lines, things could not go more awful for Baskonia, especially when they are getting to that important stage of the season, when they are accumulating more and more unnecessary losses.
You look at it and you've got to go, is the absence of Toko Shengelia really that big? Like, obviously he's a vital player to them and all that, but this has been an absolute collapse without him, and they should be good enough to, not be this bad. Now, Toko, he's great, brilliant baller, obviously vital to Baskonia. That they're this bad without him in terms of results is really worrying. You're still getting the numbers from Voigtman, which is great. He's really, really stepped up in a way, which I think even his greatest admirers, and this corner is definitely an admirer of Johannes Voigtman, don't get us wrong. I don't think any of us saw him being this good for Baskonia this season, but of late, he's been the bright spark, because Bargnani is just flat out a liability. You thought he was coming into this season with a bit of a point to prove type thing. He's just looking old, and even worse indeed than he's ever looked, and he's never exactly been Mr. D. This is just ugly from Baskonia of late, and I keep telling people, well, I used to, I haven't actually written a column for it, I do a bit for Project Spurs, that the teams they ought to follow, it's Baskonia, even if they didn't have Adam Hanga to keep an eye on there, but of late I'm starting to question that, because they haven't been as cool to watch. Aris, Efes, can we trust them? And Baskonia, should we just be terrified of their prospects now?
I don't think that it's fair to focus just in those two players, because Baskonia lately doesn't perform the way we were expecting them to perform. So this is an issue for Baskonia, but on the other hand, you have to acknowledge that there is a team emerging, and this team is Anadolu Efes. As I have said before, Anadolu Efes had some great pre-season games, so it's not a surprise the fact that they are performing like that at this point of the season when they really need something big to happen in order to make it to the playoffs. The real surprise for Anadolu Efes was probably the fact that so far they have been kind of fiffy because they have a lot of athletic abilities. One of the best point guards in the league in the face of Thomas Hertel and a very battle-tested front line. So yes, I believe we can trust Efes. That's the bottom line, and that was the game that proved we can trust Efes. On the other hand, you have the game between Olympiacos and Fenerbahce. Olympiacos managed to give a game to Fenerbahce despite missing Vasilis Panoulis, and in the end it was all about Bogdanovic having a great day and winning it. It was a game of tactics, and Olympiacos decided at the end, and that's why they had they didn't foul right away in the last possession. They wanted the ball to get to Udo hands. This didn't happen, and when they decided to foul, the referees decided that it was too late, and they didn't give the call. They didn't give the call, but Olympiacos in the end was happy to keep the tie-breaking advantage, and you can see that it was a game from which both sides emerged happy, even though Olympiacos may have had a real chance to get a second win over Fenerbahce, and this is not something that many can say this season, right, Moshe?
For me, the experience, between Fener and Olympiacos was amazing. It's not just the intensity. I was rather disappointed, to be honest, because the way the game progressed, I was sure that Oli had the game in their hands. It was, it went their way. It was finally good to see that, without Vispan, my man, they can do something very good. They were up by 9 points as soon as the fourth began, but then all hell broke loose. It's like nothing was organized. Everything was coincidental. Instead of taking a timeout somewhere like 2 or 2.5 minutes into the fourth quarter, they didn't, and when they did, it was either too late or the players did not respond well coming back from it, and they lost the game, possession by possession by possession. They never managed to, to stop that bad thing that was going on there for them. It was too bad because they had a genuine shot of, giving us even a more interesting fight between the fourth and the fifth place, in the games to come. But either way, Olympiacos managed to do something good. And when I'm saying they managed to do something good, I'm obviously referring to the fact that, they ended up losing the game with a margin that gives them the advantage in a head-to-head comparison with Fener, should this be an issue. But again, they had a shot, and it's too bad. I think it will, they will have another test, this week versus a very absent Maccabi, which is, let's be honest about it, usually wouldn't have been a game for us to discuss, but just for the fact, I would love to see what they can do this week, actually, and we'll discuss it obviously later on, but your intake, Emmett.
Well, if Bobby Dixon goes 3 of 15 from the field and you still lose to him, I'm seriously questioning what you did in that final quarter. And of course, a lot of that was Bogdan had a fantastic performance, particularly scoring-wise. But you look at sort of Oli, and while they were able to get certain things right, minus V-Span, minus Billy, minus Panoulis, whatever you want to call him, it wasn't exactly like Kem Birch time in this game either. So, they had a few things came right, but I think there was more in this Oli team than they delivered on the night. I think the head-to-head part, that's a nice sort of thing to have coming out of it, but it's still entirely plausible that Fener finish a game ahead of Oli. Not likely, but plausible. So, you don't want to be relying on the head-to-head so much. Personally, Fener winning ugly again, it'd be nice to see, purely from a neutral perspective, if they can have a couple more games where they just win-win, rather than, find a way to get the ugly W, because, to me, Fener's best game is when they aren't a grit and grind team like they can, but their best game is when they just flat out come out and ball on a team, So, yeah, important win for Fener. They're looking more and more likely to be a top 4 team as the weeks go by, even though the margin between them and Pau is slim. But yeah, you got to be happy for Fenner and disappointed in Oli mostly. But that pretty much wraps it up for the 4 minute warning, which as ever was not close to 4 minutes. Well, it was, just on the other side, I suppose. And that leads us on nicely to our next section.
And now it's time for the Scouts Notebook, where we look back at key performances during the week in Euroleague to see who stood out and why.
Well, on the matter of Yul, I think that at this point nothing can surprise anyone about this player. He's for the past two seasons one of the best point guards in the league. He is probably the best combo guard in the league, unless you put Nando De Colo and his season into the same measurement. I believe that Nando De Colo is more a shooting guard than Yul, but the way that Yul plays, it's not comparable to anyone else in Europe. You can compare him with Vasilis Spanoulis because they both have the knack to make almost every big shot, but on the other hand, Spanoulis is much more adept in the pick and roll, and he can attack teams on 5-on-5 situation. Yul, it's like a Tasmanian devil sometimes when he runs all the court from side to side, finishing by himself plays in transition. So I don't know if, of course, it's his decision to make, but this kind of game, I believe that could translate even better in the NBA. So maybe, and I know that Madrid fans will hate me now, maybe you should really consider a move to the NBA, because he really can do it. And the same can be said about Nando De Colo, of course. Nando De Colo had a phenomenal 2016, being the best French player on the planet, and this is not a small statement when you have to compete players like Boris Diaw, Tony Parker and Nicolas Batum, or even Rudy Gobert, who is emerging as one of the best young big men in the NBA. But Nando De Colo was special, and he's continuing to be special. The only difference that I see between him and Milos Teodosic, because they play as a tandem in CSKA Moscow, is that Teodosic is clearly better in setting up his teammates. It's not that Nando De Colo does not pass well, he does, but he does not create the way that Teodosic does. And I believe that this is the main difference between the two of them.
Well, Ari said the fun part, talking about the glamorous performance. I think maybe the most glamorous performance in a single quarter made by a single player, obviously, with Yui, and with him, it's amazing. It's like, what else can he do? But moving on, we had some other great performances as well. Speaking of Brian Dunstan, who I think we haven't shown that much love to him, even though he's very important. He's a very talented player, probably one of the best defenders in the Euroleague, especially for his position, what he's contributing to Anadolu Efes. And another kid, well, he's not precisely a kid. He's maturing under the guidance of coach Jasikevicius. Obviously, we're talking about Lekavicius, who's maturing. Also had a monster game. I think these two players we haven't talked about him enough throughout the season so far. But Dunstan, besides of him being a beast, a shot blocker, a very athletic guy that can change shots, finish well around the rim when needed, great rebounder, great timing, very strong upper body. It's like whatever Efes needs from him, he will do. And he may become one of the most wanted players as this season ends because, look at him. Look at what he's doing. And Lekavicius also, what do you think about these two players? They were a beautiful sight to see in the last Euroleague game. Lekavicius for Žalgiris playing at Freak City and with Dunstan at home versus Baskonia.
Well, Dunstan, what can you say? He's an Armenian international. He's a two-time Euroleague MVP, and they're usually the sort of jokes we make about him because, like, not Euroleague MVP, defensive MVP. Sorry, because like his defensive player of the years, we were kind of going really, and of course he's as Armenian as I am, I'm still bitter over that European Small Nations tournament. But performance-wise, particularly the last few games, like Dunstan's really shown what he can do in an FS jersey. And I think that's, kind of important to him in multiple respects. Like Moshe pointing out that he's a free agent end of the year, so money talks. And so he's got to, show why he's worth it. And like he's a player who's going to get value, who's going to deliver in terms of like, getting a good contract. So I'm not surprised there. I suppose the real surprise was Luka Lekavicius, who is another Saris miracle because Lekavicius just seemed like just another guy in the Zalgiris roster, could deliver this and that for you here and there. But you never thought he was going to have a nutso game. 11 of 12 from the field, including 5 of 5 from deep. 29 points. Utter domination from the kid. And say 27 points. But, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. We'll allow the 4 turnovers when you're just going that hot, kid, because you were clearly given the green light. You went off, and in a game Zalgiris absolutely fundamentally had to win no matter what. You were the difference. So Lekavicius, my boy, my guy, you got her done this week.
The coach's playbook, where we look at the strategies that worked and that need to work in the coming weeks in Euroleague.
We're taking a slightly different approach to the coach's playbook in this episode, mainly because Moshe's a nerd. Well, actually, we're all nerds, but Moshe did nerd work this week, so Moshe's a nerd who actually does the effort. And looking at sort of the records in the Euroleague are, there for anyone to see. When you go a bit deeper, when you look at sort of the streaks, when you look at the home form, there are other stories to tell. And Moshe, there's one I want to ask you about to start off with, but I know there are more interesting ones when it comes to the playoffs. I mean, Milano, I somehow, even though they stank for 3 months, managed to miss that they lost 10 games straight.
Well, it amazed me because when I looked at the numbers, when we did the work, it was kind of, I knew what to expect, but still, it was just looking at the streaks that, got me thinking, wow, okay, I'm onto something here. And I wrote about it at the beginning of the season, what might be needed then. Throughout, we said something about, the barrier 14, the need of at least 14 wins to get into the playoffs. And now when we're looking at the streaks, there's like a clear picture. It's, a team, like all the first 8 teams had no more than a 3-game losing streak. And that is, as soon as you look at number 9, it's boom, it's like right there. You can't miss it. It's like Darussafaka, 4 games losing streak. And it's something you say, you think it's, it's nothing. It's just 1 game, but it says a lot more than that. It says something about the mentality, not let things escalate more than what they need to. But just looking at it, it proves that we were right. You have to pretty much keep your home safe and then go and try and grab as many as away wins. And basically, Madrid are now dominating the competition. They are within a 9-game winning streak, and this is the best we've seen so far. Which is great. And Aris, what did you think about this table?
You are probably quite right, Moshe, on this table, and I couldn't agree more. I really don't see Zalgiris finishing the miracle run that they already have with them entering the playoffs, but I'm not really sure about the trio of Anadolu Efes, Baskonia, and Darussafaka, who is going to be left out. Maybe we should include Crvena Zvezda in this talk, the team that will be left out from the playoffs. They have better numbers, but the thing with Zvezda is that they are a unit that plays collectively, and they can't really have a guy who takes on any responsibility when things get tough, and this may be needed down the stretch. Of course, it's obvious by the standings that at this point it's between Anadolu Efes, Baskonia, and Darussafaka, and I really can't pick a team that is lesser or less deserving to enter the playoffs. This will be proved and decided on the court in the last 7 weeks.
The past is in the past. What's done is done. It's time to look forward. Here's our Games of the Week.
Well, we're on to the games of the week, and a couple of very quick hit ones. One that jumps out as it's what it says in the tin: Baskonia against EA7 Milano. Milano just need a win just for some level of dignity, whereas Baskonia need a win because guys, your playoff race is actually in danger here. It's that simple. Like, we don't even need to discuss this anymore. Moshe, Unix, Ephes. I suppose for Ephes it's a case of just keep winning, baby.
Oh yeah, simple as that. Just bring the W, stay alive, and not just alive. Make things a bit more interesting. Let the other teams feel the heat. But more interesting than that, I think, is the Darussafaka Panathinaikos game. Oh man, this game is it's going to be great. Panathinaikos showed us that they only need one fearless, explosive, athletic, badass guy, and they got it with Mike James and his winner shot versus Unix last week. I'm just waiting for this one. I mean, I know that obviously Coach Pasquale would try to get this game to be a very defensive oriented, to slow things down, especially because if we're looking in terms of athleticness, maybe Darussafaka has the edge over there, but not necessarily, and not you cannot say in full confidence that it is like a definite advantage. And they are coming off a rough patch. For Panathinaikos, a game that should they lose, and if Zvezda win, they might find themselves within calculations of who they want to meet in a playoff series. Is it Olympiacos with the Reds having the home court advantage, or getting just Fener with Fener having the home court advantage? Which either way, we are, for us anyway, it's a win-win situation. For Panathinaikos, not necessarily. For Darussafaka, a loss would mean pretty much sayonara. Aris, how do you see this game? How it develops, potential strategies. What are you expecting?
This is a very crucial game for Darussafaka, which so far hasn't performed well against the Greek teams, neither Panathinaikos or Olympiacos. So this is their chance to prove something, win a team that is also in the run for the playoffs, but not among the top 4 of the standings. So this is a game much more crucial for Darussafaka than it is for Panathinaikos. Panathinaikos seems playoff bound. Of course, there is a chance that they will not make it, but especially after winning Unix Kazan, they have made a very important step towards making it to the postseason. So, what I really want to see in this game, it's what kind of reaction can Darussafaka have, especially after losing almost by 20 points in Madrid. Darussafaka at some point was even considered a team that could make it to the playoff, to the Final Four, and with relative ease. Coach Blatt from the first moment said that his team is still young, he is still building something new, and to put it simple, if Darussafaka wants to stay in the game for the playoffs until the end, a home game against a team that is already near them but in the playoffs must be won. There is no way for them to avoid it, and this is also what can help Panathinaikos. Panathinaikos will not have this kind of pressure, at least standings wise. Panathinaikos on the road has not performed that great during this season, but they have the luxury to get what they want without making this a do or die game. Of course, it's obvious that Panathinaikos wants to win, and Panathinaikos is slowly building a very interesting chemistry because it was a team created to run, and now we see a team that is much more half-court oriented, like most of Coach Pasquale's teams. And this team still needs to integrate Alessandro Gentile in its rotation and get meaningful minutes from him. So it's also a test for Panathinaikos, but it's a different kind of a test.
Yeah, I think, Darüşşafaka, Pau, it's a case of they both need wins for very different reasons. Pau to stay in the race for a top 4 slot, Dashka just to keep the pressure on the Baskonia and FS combo. So these are two teams I both neither trust nor fully distrust. And I think that's kind of what makes it interesting. Like, both teams need wins for very different reasons. I would lean towards a Pau win purely because I trust them marginally more than Darüşşafaka, but it even says in the way you can see if you're watching the video version that not that confident. But another game which has similar trust issues is Zalgiris Fenerbahce, because while I typically trust Fenerbahce to find a way to win ugly, Zalgiris is not a team you're going to beat if you're relying on winning ugly. Like, they've shown that. Like, you've got to properly beat them to get the W. And going to Kaunas, that's no easy challenge. So it's going to be a good one to watch. I think, it's a huge ask for Zalgiris to get the win here. Don't get me wrong here. But I think Fener know they need to deliver a performance in this game. Now, I'm not betting against Saras making things hard for them, but I think Fener are going to have to play at a very high level even to win a reasonably close game here. And I think that's at least a good sign in its own right. And that pretty much wraps up our games of the week. I'm going to, however, give one quick word for Moshe on this one because, well, there is a small matter of, his hometown team also having a game. So, Moshe, your thoughts on that Zalgiris Fener game, and a quick shout out for the hometown team, baby.
Well, we couldn't just do without it, now could we? I mean, Žalgiris, they are a well-coached team. They've proven it. They are not afraid, and this is what I love about them the most. They might not be the most talented team, the most, the flashiest team, the most glamorous team, but they are a bunch of fighters, They might struggle in some positions, obviously, versus Ekpiodu, Udo, and, maybe Vesely, that I'm still waiting for him to manage to give a few consecutive good games. Should Atome arrive, that might do things a bit more easier for them, for Fener. But again, it's like the game is being played in front of the Lithuanian crowd, and we know how they can get. I mean, it's them and Zvezda fans who we like the most, obviously, with the Germans, Freak City and Olympiacos. There are a lot of great teams with great fan base. Amazing. But, just to get it straight, this game, it in a way, Fener is supposed to have the obvious edge. But I'm not ruling out a surprise, per se, let's call it like this. Should Žalgiris do something different? Like, should they win? I will not be that surprised. Should Fener win? I mean, I'm expecting Fener, but at the same time, expecting Sharks to give them one hell of a fight. And that is pretty much it. We would love to say something about Maccabi Tel Aviv, Olympiacos, especially for Olympiacos coming to Tel Aviv. Always a great game, but Olympiacos minus V-Span, Maccabi minus like half the roster. No Alexander, no Miller, no Devin Smith, and no Andrew Godlock, pretty much. That is, Godlock is a game time decision, by the way. Miller not expected to play. Alexander still recovering from a broken hand. And Smith just got, he sprained his ankle during the last league game. So, yeah, this is not a game that we can overtalk. And that is it for this episode, for the 14th episode. As for us, every day is a Euroleague day. The time has come. It is time to say goodbye in the great words of Andrea Botticelli. And, from me, Moshe, Team Scout, you can always find me at teamscout.net. Also, great rankings game column. You should go in, check it out. Always, follow us, whether it's on, Twitter, Facebook, or, Eurohoops TV, where we will be featured as well. And, Moses B1 at Twitter, show the love, spread it. Emmett, Aris, guys, where can they find you?
Well, as always, you can find me mostly in Dublin, although I'm actually in a different part of Ireland this weekend. Long story. But on the internet, which is where you really need to find me, at BIE_basketball on Twitter, Facebook.com/ballineurope, and of course, ballineurope.com. And as a quick word, I'm really glad the Eurocup's playoffs are on Euroleague Player because it means I finally get to watch some Eurocup this season. Aris, over to you.
And as always, you can find me on Twitter, on Facebook, on my personal handles, and around the Eurohoops portal and social media channels.
Sweet 16. An open look on
Euroleague basketball. Covering 16 Euroleague teams.
Gonna be sweet. Sweet 16.